walled garden, Beela Green Lane, Coltishall. Erection of a dwelling, greenhouse, garage, landscaping and access. So that's put the site in context, that's the built form of Horsted and Coltishall. And the red line depicts the outline of the settlement limits for both those parishes. The site is outside to the east of the nearest settlement limit, as you see, location of the site marked. Again, the site is within the Coltishall Conservation Area boundary. You can see the extent, quite a wide-ranging conservation boundary that encompasses parts of the parish, the adjoining parish of Horsted, and also quite an extent of land within the Broads Authority area. And that Broads Authority boundary actually comes quite close and in fact adjoins the southern edge of the application site. So we are within Coltishall Conservation Area, obviously of heritage importance. Aerial view, so that's the application site, the extent of the walled garden marked, track that leads from Beela Green Lane to provide vehicular access. Historically, the walled garden and the adjoining land were sort of a parkland setting and functional setting to Coltishall Hall. And you'll see a slide of that closer up soon. But the Coltishall Hall is just in this location here. So in terms of vehicular access, Beela Green Lane comes down to Wroxham Road, and obviously eastwards heads off to parish of Wroxham, but then back into the village heading west with the usual amenities and services, etc. Closer view of the application site. What we have just identified here are nearby heritage assets in the form of Grade 2 listed buildings. That's Coltishall Hall. Originally Coltishall Hall was a much larger estate that encompassed a lot of the land around it, including the walled garden, woodland and fields around, which were part of a parkland setting. You've also got two other nearby listed buildings off White Lion Road. The red line, blue line drawing. So the red line is the extent of the application site. The blue land is land owned by the applicant, but which doesn't form part of this current planning application. That's the extent, existing extent of the walled garden where vehicular access comes into it. There are existing sort of horticultural type buildings within the walled garden and an existing package treatment plant for dealing with foul water to the north of the site, and that's picked up in the supplementary schedule. So a block plan to indicate the location of the proposal. It's in, call it this northeastern quadrant of the walled garden, vehicular access coming in at this point here, proposed garage building, keeping the functional and servicing elements of the building in this part of the site. It's been located to maximize solar gain, etc., in terms of the eco credentials of the property to help generate heat and energy as part of its construction through the layout. You've also got a proposed greenhouse here butting up to the northern wall of the walled garden. Elevations of the property, bit difficult here to sort of show the whole property in context through the submitted elevations, but hopefully you've seen the paper copies of those. What I will lead on to is the CGI's, computer generated images of the proposal. This is at a low level looking across to the property. It's a single story property using this sort of battery formation of pitched roofs on this sort of half crescent formation, primarily located, as I say, to maximize solar gain for part of the eco credentials of the property. Greenhouse over here on the northwest side. the existing entrance into the walled garden, which will be the vehicular entrance to serve the property, and then the garage building is located on this side here. You'll see that clearer in this sort of bird's eye perspective. This is all about bringing and giving a viable use to the walled garden, which is a building of heritage significance, albeit it's an undesignated heritage asset. And this will bring the walled garden back into a viable reuse and ensure the longevity and preservation of the solid red brick walls as well. So that's the, let's say, the bird's eye formation, vehicular access coming in here, the servicing elements in relation to garaging and some undercover parking here, a sunken garden to the face of the dwelling, and then restoring the walled garden in terms of a functional, productive space in the remaining 3/4 of it. And that's the glass house that's referred to. Looking at the point of vehicular access from Beeler Green Lane, looking across the open fields, there's an existing track that comes around the outer edge of the field that leads to that walled garden. This is the back of Caldershall Hall, and actually that's the back of the Broads Authority area's jurisdiction. So you can see the walled garden as a feature, certainly in terms of the long distance views, and then the track that leads to the application site. And that's the walled garden. This is the eastern boundary with the existing vehicular entrance where you've got these buttresses. This is inside the walled garden, again looking back out. Again, those restored buttresses to the walled garden. Let's clear that. So the location of the property is roughly in this area here, which was that sort of northeastern corner of the site. Quite a large area, as you see. That's the northern wall. That indicates where some of the existing preservation and making good of the wall has been carried out by the applicant. Looking due west, these were some of the sort of functional, I'd call them sort of horticultural buildings in that northwestern corner. So you get an appreciation as well as to how big this site area is and how potentially this site will be utilised and preserved in the future. That's then looking at the southern boundary, vegetation on that, and obviously part of the proposal that we're seeking to achieve here is the restoration and preservation of that wall, and obviously that will involve careful removal of the vegetation, repointing, etc., probably patching of brickwork to help restore it for the long term. Examples of the condition when the applicant took the wall on in terms of ownership in 2014. And some before and after. It's ongoing maintenance and obviously still work to be done. I'll leave members on that slide. Important to say, although the application submitted before you today was submitted under the auspices of Para 79E of the MPPF, and that's where the design has to be of exceptional quality, the officer's report takes members through each of those 4 criteria and makes it clear that the proposal does not meet the high bar of meeting all 4 criteria, and so is not considered acceptable under this paragraph, and that's paragraph 79E. However, in this particular case, there are considered significant other material considerations in the form of the walled garden. That is considered a building of heritage significance, and it is considered that the proposed development will give the walled garden a viable use, ensuring its long-term preservation. The commentary on page 63 of the report indicates this significant benefit, and on pages 80 and 81 of the supplementary schedule in point 1, it is further qualified that in this regard, the proposal can be supported as it is considered to comply with paragraph 79B of the MPPF, and that's where the development would represent the optimal viable use of a heritage asset or would be appropriate enabling development to secure the future of a heritage asset. I would further draw members' attention to points 2, 3 and 4 in the supplementary schedule, and in particular point 3 relating to permitted development rights, and proposed removal of the right to demolish walls. Obviously, that's important here, bearing in mind that's the key feature that is the driver for this application in terms of finding a viable use for that walled garden and retention of it in the future. The report concludes that the long-term retention of the walled garden as a non-designated heritage asset is a significant material consideration that is considered in this particular instance to outweigh the harms of the site being located outside of a settlement limit. Approval is recommended as set out on page 68 of the agenda, with the addition as referred to in point 3 of the supplementary schedule, which related to removal of PD rights in relation to demolition of walls. That concludes presentation, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Officer Harris. And members, can I ask, do you have any questions in relation to the presentation before we go to public speaking? No, I don't see anybody raising any hands. So that will take us on to our public speaking. And I can just advise you that we don't have any representations from the Parish Council, nor do we have any members of the public who wish to voice their objection. However, we do have members of the public who want to speak in support of this application. And today we have Mike Chapman, who's the applicant, Debbie Sherman, agent, and Crispin Lambert, the architect. Officer Lincoln, can I ask you please to unmute Mr. Chapman? Mr. Chapman, thank you for attending this morning. And can I just ask, did you want all three of the your group to speak for 5 minutes, or are you happy to start with yourself, and then if there's any questions, or would you like everyone to speak for 5 minutes?
No, everyone will be speaking for 5 minutes, please.
Perfect. Okay, that's lovely. So I just need to explain to you that we don't have a clock that, and this, I won't, hopefully I don't have to repeat this, but we don't have a clock that we can show you for your 5 minutes, but we have got the host who will advise you whenever you have 1 minute left remaining. Is that acceptable to you?
That's fine, thank you.
Okay, unfortunately, if we showed a clock, then we would lose you, and we don't want to do that. So if you could please introduce yourself to the committee, and you will have 5 minutes starting from now.
Good morning, everyone, Planning Committee members. My name is Michael Chapman, and I am the applicant and owner of the walled garden adjacent farmland and woodland. I'm not a good off-the-cuff speaker, so hopefully you will bear with me while I read a short additional statement I've prepared. The old Coltishall Hall walled garden is a fantastic place. It has its own microclimate and a feeling and presence that is difficult to describe. Its walls clearly show all the different phases that it has gone through over the past 2 centuries. It has its place in history and deserves to be looked after by way of having a useful purpose. A home there will utilise all that the garden has to offer. It is why the walled garden was built in the first place. A home there would break its current isolation from the wider local community. For the past 75 years, little was done to look after the walled garden, and it was allowed to deteriorate up to a point where it could easily be argued that it was past the point of saving. Close on 6,000 work hours later, over a period of 5.5 years and at a cost of several tens of thousands of pounds, I can now say in confidence that the walled garden is now here to stay, at least for a few more years. Lots still need to be done, and it will need ongoing care and maintenance in the years ahead. Whilst working on the wall, you are constantly thrown curveballs which need to be dealt with. All repairs have been done so that the original design and features of the wall are maintained. All this takes copious amounts of time and materials. Not having too onerous a timetable for all that needs to be done or still to be done would be prudent. This aspect of any permission granted concerns me, as mentioned by way of the proposed condition 10 initials NS. For the work to be done properly, you have to have a lot of patience. All my work, you could say, would account for nothing if planning permission for a home there is not granted. The real possibility would then exist that the garden would once again enter a period of decay and deterioration out of the sight of everyone. This would be a real shame. I personally cannot see anyone else being prepared to look after and maintain the walled garden going forward, because why would they? They would not have a logical reason to do so. I thank you for your time and attention, and would gladly answer any questions or queries that anyone might have.
Okay, thank you. And members, can I ask if anybody has got any questions for our speaker this morning? No, that's lovely. Thank you very much, Mr. Chapman.
Oh,
We will now move on.
Councillor Ward has his hand raised. Sorry.
I'm sorry, Councillor Ward, I didn't see that.
Yes, yes, thank you, Mr. Chapman. I'm just going to ask, are you intending to live in the house yourself, please?
I am indeed.
Thank you.
I farm the farmland and look after the woodland, where I'm hopefully turning it into a truffery.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, and now if we could please move to Officer Atherton, if you could unmute Debbie Sherman, please. Hi, Debbie. Thank you very much for attending this morning. If you could please, you're aware that unfortunately you have 5 minutes. We don't have a clock, and the host will advise you when you have 1 minute to go. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, if you could please introduce yourself, and you have 5 minutes from now.
Thank you. Good morning, members. I'm Debbie Sherman. I'm the planning agent from One Planning Consultants. So first of all, we wanted to welcome the recommendation of approval and thank officers for their positive engagement during the determination process. You will have seen that there's overwhelming support for the scheme from the Parish Council, the CPRE, the Broads Authority and local residents. We acknowledge that officers agree, as set out in both the main and supplementary report, that this exemplar scheme is justified in this location and it complies with the requirements of paragraph 79B, insofar as it will achieve the optimal viable use for this locally important heritage asset and secure its future going forward. And we also note that the officer report acknowledges that 3 of the 4 aspects necessary to comply with paragraph 79E are also met. I'll just recap those. First of all, that it would raise standards in the area as a consequence of its unique design and construction, that it would significantly enhance its immediate setting by facilitating the return of the walled garden into a viable use, ensuring its long-term preservation and protection, as you've just heard Mr. Chapman describe, and that it would be sensitive to the defining characteristics of the area as a result of its minimal visual impact that respects the significance of this important heritage asset. Compliance with the remaining aspect of the scheme relating to its outstanding or innovative credentials will be set out by the architect, Crispin Lambert. So I do not intend to repeat or deal with any aspects that he's going to raise, but I hope you will, having heard him, exercise your judgment and agree that our proposal meets with all aspects of Part E of paragraph 79. So leading on from this positive recommendation, I just wanted to provide you with a little more information on what the applicant has already undertaken since he purchased the site in 2017. You've heard what he's had to say this morning, but I just wanted to reiterate really, it has been a labour of love on his part, and he estimates that there are still a number of years' work required to complete the restoration. Our client is carrying out the works himself and has developed a high level of time-served expertise. He's using traditional materials such as lime, cement, and is salvaging and reusing bricks wherever possible. As you've heard this morning, he's entirely committed to completing its restoration. We note the various conditions which are proposed to protect the historic integrity of the site, and we do not object to those conditions. But we would ask, particularly in relation to condition 10, that the condition is phrased in such a way that takes account of the fact the applicant is doing the work himself, and therefore the wording of that condition enables him to complete the project without being unduly onerous. We would suggest, therefore, that a schedule of works is agreed as part of that condition, and that would then take account of the circumstances described to you today. Overall, we hope that you agree our scheme meets all the necessary tests set out in both national and local policy, and that planning permission will be granted. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Members, do you have any questions for the public speaker? No. Okay, thank you very much for your time. It's very much appreciated.
Thank you.
Officer Atherton, if I could please ask you to unmute Crispin Lambert, please. Hello, Mr. Lambert. I'm sure that you're aware of the timescale, and you will have 5 minutes with an interruption at 1 minute to go. Is that okay with you?
That's fine. Thank you very much.
Okay, lovely. Thank you. If you could just introduce yourself, please, and you have 5 minutes from now.
Thank you very much. My name's Crispin Lambert. I'm the architect on the scheme, and I'd like to thank you for the opportunity of talking to you now. And I really wanted to just set out to you some of the premises that we've looked at when designing this scheme. The first thing we went back into was the history of walled gardens in the United Kingdom and the technological, the horticultural, the scientific advances that they actually encompassed themselves. The skills that came about through the propagation of the plants, the grafting, the bringing forward of certain rare and exotics, vegetables, and of course, plants from around the world that were seen as being special. The walled garden has a place in history as being a thing of innovation and skill. Walled gardeners, there was a head gardener within a walled garden who would have great skills at bringing these things together. In the design, we wanted to take those ideas and take that forward to the future at this very important time in our history at the moment, where energy and conservation and sustainability are so key to all of us now. And what we've done is develop a building that uses very, very sustainable features. And I'll briefly go over those for you now, although you probably read them. But starting with the location of the building, as has been said, it's located in the corner of the site to maximize solar gain for the building, both in photovoltaic, the generation of electricity, and indeed in natural solar gain to the building, using that heat within the building to heat the occupants. We're also using ground source heating within the garden itself in a shallow loop. And the form of the building reflects very much the tradition of big vineries within a walled garden of the period of the 18th century. So that means a building that stands forward of the external walls and actually has the construction of a boiler room behind it. This was done at Fulham Palace and in other locations. So there are strong historical references for that building within the garden. We also know that buildings within walled gardens were very common and were a standard feature. And this picks up on those references of building within a walled garden. In terms of the construction, I'll briefly go over this. The excavation for the building, which is required to bring the building's height down a bit, you saw from the images that it sits just within the top of the walled garden, so it's not really visible from outside. We have kept all that soil that's spoil in effect within the walled garden, and that's used for the raised beds. The gardens and the grounds are completely reconstructed, so the biodiversity, the bees, the wildlife will all come back into this location. The foundations of the building are made of a very light cementatious system called limecrete, which is very green in terms of cement-based products. The insulation in the slab is recycled glass, so it's recycled glass windscreens and put down in a very ecological way. But the most important thing is the construction of the building is hemp. Hemp is a product that is a natural grass. It holds carbon as it grows, and when
1 minute remaining.
Thank you very much. The hemp is very good at sequestering the carbon. We are also using hemp bats in the roof to sustain the roof. The solar gain is controlled through adjustable brise soleil, and there will be a control system that brings together the photovoltaic and indeed the battery system for the storage of energy, the ground source heating, and indeed control the warmth within the house. So, so many things have gone into it. We believe it's an exemplar. We believe it's unique. We don't believe that the concept of recycled timber used within a hemp construction that can be built by an amateur, such as the client, or indeed a small building firm, has been done before, and we think it's a unique and true exemplar and outstanding of its type. Thank you very much for letting me speak and for listening.
Thank you very much. Members, do you have any questions for the speaker? Councillor Moncur? Just unmute yourself, sorry, Councillor.
I just want to congratulate Mr. Lambert on an outstanding design and look forward to the host party should planning permission be granted.
Well,
okay, we'll move on quickly. Okay, is there any Councillor Karimi?
I was just interested in the use of hemp for the building. How does that work, please?
The hemp is grown, obviously. It's like a very tall grass. It's cut into what's called a shiv, which is short lengths of 4 inches, 100 millimeters long. And it's then mixed up with lime and water, and it's barrowed into form. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Interesting. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, any further questions? No. Okay, thank you very much for your time, ladies and gentlemen. We will now move on to Councillor Copplestone. And if you could please unmute. Oh, you've got that, Jane. Okay, thank you. If you could just please introduce yourself, Councillor Copplestone, and you're aware of the timescale.
Yes, thank you very much, Chair.
You have 5 minutes from now. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Just for everyone's information, I'm Councillor Copplestone and Coltshall is my ward. The other speakers have spoken in a very erudite way, and I fear after speaking last, I may repeat some of the information that they've already given. The applicant, Mr. Chapman, has a strong connection to Coltshall, having lived there during his childhood, and he purchased the former walled kitchen garden of Coltshall Hall back in 2014. Since then, Mr. Chapman has worked to restore this dilapidated garden, clearing the overgrown vegetation and ivy which was covering and damaging the walls. He has shown dedication to this restoration project, which has been much admired by many local people. Historically, the gardeners employed by large country houses have lived close by to their work, and this is an established and practical solution to manage large kitchen gardens. The applicant therefore proposes to self-build a very modest 110 square metre in floor area live-work dwelling in the northeastern quadrant of the walled garden, with the access along the same track which crossed the adjoining field. The design and construction of this proposed project has been carefully considered with great consideration to the environment, with the aim of reducing carbon emissions as far as possible, and these measures include positioning the building to maximise passive solar gains, using recycled glass for the subbase to the building and footings, and a low embodied carbon lime-based floor construction. The main construction will utilise natural hemp for walls and roof and a reclaimed timber throughout the building, with the aim of achieving high thermal efficiency, lower running costs and a lower carbon footprint. The scheme will also utilise solar PV for electricity generation and a ground source heat pump. The water supply will be via a private deep borehole. The architect is confident the construction of this simple self-build project can be built by an unskilled individual, and the scheme provides the opportunity for this heritage asset to be preserved for future generations. The new dwelling house will be visually contained inside the walled garden and therefore will not cause impact to the character of the village landscape and the conservation area. If approved, this will be a great example to others that self-building, whilst employing green building techniques with the aim of reducing carbon, is cost-effective and affordable method of construction, whilst achieving a highly environmentally sustainable home. I therefore support this application wholeheartedly and ask you to approve this exemplar self-build project and therefore the conservation of the walled garden for future generations. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Copplestone. Excuse me, members, do you have any questions for the councillor? No? Okay, thank you very much for your time. Okay, members, we will now go into discussion. If I can just remind you that, excuse me, you will all remain on the Executive Committee. If you should have any comments or questions that you would like to ask, please raise your hands or put your request into the chat and Leah will advise me. If it's necessary during the discussion, Officer Lincoln and Officer Harris will be here to advise on any questions that you might have. Members, do you have any questions?
Councillor Moncur had his hand raised, and also Councillor Kumi Govinlu has a hand raised. Oh, and Councillor Ward. Oh.
I'm sorry. Okay, I haven't got COVID. It's okay. Councillor, sorry, who did you say, Leah, first? I was choking at the time. Councillor Moncur.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm sure everyone's fighting to go with officer recommendation. So, being as I got in first, I shall go with officer recommendation. Sorry, everybody,
As I'm
for
second, I'd
jumping
like
in.
to second that.
I'll third it. Okay, do you wish to have any discussion in relation to this application?
Nothing from me.
No.
No. Okay.
Councillor Fisher had his hand raised, and also Councillor Folger has his hand raised as well.
Okay. Councillor Fisher? Councillor Ward?
Thank you.
Councillor
Yeah, I really just a matter of saying how important it is, I believe, to support this application. I think walled gardens are excellent, and I do recognise, on the other hand, that the maintenance involved with that massive expanse of walls. And when you're looking at a project like this, and I do congratulate Mr. Lambert on his designs and his suggestions, I think this really does two things. It involves an excellent property, which is environmentally friendly, but also it does ensure the actual the future viability of the walls that are such an important factor in some of these listed buildings. So yeah, I really do support this 100%.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Fulcher?
Thank you, Chairman. This is an outstanding project, bearing in mind it's in the Cotteshall Conservation Area, and I think not only is it very, very suitable for the area, being a single-storey development, and will preserve the walled garden. And I think clearly it is extremely suitable, and I think everybody concerned with it needs to be commended with all the effort that's been put in. And I'm fully support the recommendation. Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you. And Councillor Ward?
Yes, well, I also think it's an absolutely brilliant plan. I just wanted to ask Nigel Harris, actually. I should have asked earlier, really. Presumably, Mr. Chapman will need to live on site while he's doing this. Has he indicated that? And if so, will he need some sort of mobile home up there? And would we need separate permission for that?
Straight answer is I don't know the answer to the question. Mr. Chapman may live locally anyway, but what I would say, if this is a self-build and he's going to be involved in the building process, then he would have the right to put a mobile home within the walled garden and live in there while he is constructing the dwelling.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Officer Harris, can I just ask, in relation to the timescale, Mr. Chapman and Debbie both said that they felt that there needed to be a longer timescale. What can we do in relation to that, please?
We were going to be pragmatic in any event, and this is in relation to condition 10, I think 10, it was, right. Where, yeah, we would be looking for a schedule of works to be agreed in relation to the discharge of that condition. So we would work with the applicant in that respect. Okay, so does that mean that do we need to reconsider these conditions? Are you saying that is the 3-year time limit, is that for them to put the plan forward, or is that for them to put the spade in the ground? The 3-year time limit is the standard time limit for applications. They have 3 years within which to commence development. Okay, and so then moving on to condition 10.
do we need to put anything in there to say that we're going to be a bit pragmatic about the timescale?
I think you can leave that with officers. We've just got a bullet point headline there in terms of the condition, but I know what's required, a schedule of works, and we can work that up together with the case officer in conjunction with the applicant. And just the other thing to remind members is the slight variation to condition 8 to pick up the point raised in the supplementary schedule to prevent what would be obviously the devastating demolition of the wall. So taking away that permitted development right.
Okay. Right, has anybody got any further questions? Leah, has anybody asked for something that I haven't seen? Okay, no, okay, lovely, thank you. So it has been proposed...
Oh, sorry, Councillor Brennan's just raised his hand.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry, Councillor Brennan. Go ahead.
That's fine, Chair. I did have it up, but it wasn't spotted earlier. I should have gone to the chat.
Sorry.
Yeah, I just very quickly, very briefly, I think this is a most excellent and worthy project. The excellent site, and it's going to preserve the walled garden. And I look forward to it coming to completion.
Thank you. And I should have said as well, whenever I was just making my comment, that I think this is absolutely brilliant. I'm assuming that the committee is going to agree. So I look forward to every stage along the way, just to see how things are going to go. But it's very, very exciting. I think it's a fantastic plan, and really commend what you're doing. Thank you very much. Okay, let's move to the vote, please. And it's been proposed by Councillor Moncur and seconded by Councillor Karimi that we should, as a committee, agree to the officer's recommendation to approve this application, subject to conditions as stated on page 68 of your papers. Officer Matthew, could you please go to the vote?
Thank you, Chairman. Yep, so if members could indicate if they are for that recommendation with the slight variation to condition 8, as Nigel mentioned. So that's Councillor Adams.
For.
Councillor Beadle.
For.
Councillor Brennan.
For.
Councillor Fisher.
For.
Councillor Folger.
For.
Councillor Holland.
For.
Councillor Karimi Guvanlu.
For.
Councillor Lawn.
For.
Councillor Moncur.
Sorry, 4.
Councillor Ward.
For.
Chairman, that's unanimously carried. Oh, sorry. Councillor Pratt. Do apologies.
Twice this morning.
I'm sorry.
No, that's all right. I'm for it with my compliments to Mr. Lambert.
Thank you. Apologies. That's unanimous, Chairman.
Okay, that's wonderful. Thank you very much. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for your time this morning. It's really appreciated. And as I said, it's a very exciting application and I really look forward to it progressing. So good luck with that. Thank you very much. Okay.